Hey, okay, so this is our midweek check-in for week 1 of our Attribute of God study. And I've got one of my great friends here, Sarah Zika, and I was just going to ask her some of these application questions from your study guide that you printed out. And we're just going to kind of interact and maybe hear her perspective on where this study this week has affected her in her walk with the Lord. So, Sarah, can you go ahead and tell us what maybe stood out to you? Which attributes stood out to you this week?
Yeah, so reading through Psalm 118 was helpful. There's so many, I feel like, attributes that are named, but then there's also some that are not. And so at first glance, I saw verse 5, he's a liberator, he sets people free. He's a helper in verse 7, he's a protector in verse 8. And those were all really good. And at first that was like my first glance of like, oh, those are things I sing about and like really helpful. But then as I went through Psalm 18, the thing that has especially been helpful in the last like 6 to 8 months has been verses 14 and 15. He's not only my song, but he's become my salvation, like something I can stand on and something that is more all-encompassing. Like those other things are great and they help me in moments for specific situations, but being my salvation is like,
Solid place you learned. That's
Yep.
awesome. Okay, so personally, go ahead, dive into that a little bit more. So I love that liberation. He gives you freedom, the victory. Like those are probably the easy things as Christians we always want to hold on to. I love that salvation, because sometimes we think salvation is just a one-time thing. So what does that mean personally to you? Why is that an attribute of God that stood out to you?
Yeah, so in that same 14 and 15, he says, he has become my salvation. Glad songs of salvation are in the tents of the righteous. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. And so, that verse 15, when it says glad songs of salvation are in the tents of the righteous, I think glad has been difficult for me to conceptually this last few months especially. And so just thinking about the righteous and like doing righteous things and like walking with the Lord in righteousness, like that is where glad and joy comes from. Like it's not going to be in like things on earth. So that has been especially important to me. And then also just like the Lord does valiantly. Like valiantly is like, I looked it up because I'm not an English person like you are, but it says with courage and determination. And those are things that don't come naturally to me.
Yeah.
And so only like through Christ. So courage and determination, especially again in the last like 6 months, I can look to Christ, and in him I can find courage and determination because he's doing that.
He's your salvation. That's awesome. Good. Okay. So this is the very practical part. This is where we all got to land. We can know all this stuff intellectually. We know he's our salvation. We know he's our courage. We know he's a valiant warrior. But how does that help you today? Like, how does that impact how you view the world today?
Yeah. So I kind of just stayed in verses 14 through 17 and then 18. But so 14 through 18. So if you keep going, 17 says, I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of the Lord. The Lord has disciplined me severely, but he has not given me over to death. And so verse 17, something that the Lord has pressed on me, even like reading through Joshua, like to remember what the Lord has done, to recount the deeds of the Lord. So like in my daily walk with the Lord, to remember what the Lord has brought me through, what the Lord is still doing, and what the Lord has promised he will do. So to recount what the Lord is doing, just like in a practical way. So through scripture and also like in my actual living. So when I look at my community, when I look at my own life, like what is happening and what he's doing.
That's great. That's awesome. Okay, so now it's your turn. I'd love for you guys to just sort of follow in Sarah's footsteps. It's super important that we just know the truth about God, but we also, like Sarah said, he's my salvation. Well, how does that affect me today? Well, I can walk in his footsteps. I know that he's been faithful. I can remember in the past where he's been my salvation. He's going to be faithful today. He's going to be faithful in the future. And so every situation, that is going to impact how you mentally walk into that situation. So drop in the comments if you want to, but we'd love to hear, how are you personally taking the attributes that stood out to you from God this week, about God this week, and using it to impact your daily life today. I'd love to be encouraged, and I know Sarah would probably love to hear back from you, some feedback back from you as well. Thanks so much, Sarah, for just sharing your heart with all of us and being vulnerable. I love learning from all of you. So jump in on this Wednesday, and thanks so much.